Special. That's what my mother always called me. I always thought she called me that because my parents lost their first two children and I was born healthy. I didn't find out until much later that I really was special. When I was 6, my dad left. I became seriously ill and lay in bed for almost 3 weeks. When I recovered, he was no longer there. I thought he was away on a business trip, as sometimes happens, and would eventually return, but he didn't. I asked my mom, and all she said was that my dad was a good man and that he would always be my dad whether he was with us or not. I later learned from my grandmother that when I got sick, he thought I was going to die and couldn't bear the thought of burying another child. I wanted to shout to him that I was alive and ask him to come back, but I didn't see him anymore, so it was just me and my mother left. My mother worked in a law firm and always worked a lot, including on weekends. Sometimes on weekends I would go with her, and while she worked at her desk, I would read or play on the computer. If I didn't bother her too much, she'd buy me an ice cream cone on the way home. Life was pretty good. When I turned 16, I wanted to join the school football team. This required parental permission, so I gave her the form at dinner that night. "Mom, I want to play soccer this year, and I need you to sign this form," I said, handing her the form and pen. "Honey, I can't let you do this," she said with a sad expression on her face. "Why not? I won't get hurt or anything." "Steve, I can't risk it. Wouldn't you rather run track or cross country?" she asked. "Mom, only nerds do that. The coach said I would be straight because of my body type. Please?" I begged now. "Steve, I just can't let you do this. If anything happens to you, I'll never be able to forgive myself." "Okay," I said in a more than angry voice. "I'll be the only one whose mom won't let him play." "Steve, how many of your friends' mothers had to bury their first two children? Until you understand what it's like, you'll have to trust my judgment. When you turn 18 and want to jump off a cliff, I won't stand in your way. But until then, you will have to obey my rules." I got angry and ran out of the kitchen. I'm not a child anymore. She won't be able to babysit me for the rest of her life, I thought to myself. Okay, I was angry, but an hour later I was standing in front of her and apologizing for being a jerk. "Sorry, Mom, but I really wanted to try out for the national team." "I know, but I think it's time to talk a little." "Mom, if it's about sex, then leave it. I know almost everything I need to know," I said, feeling more than a little embarrassed. "Oh, yes, yes. Well, that's not what I wanted to talk about, but since you brought it up." I stopped her by saying we could always talk about it later and was relieved that she didn't press the issue. What teenage boy wants to talk about sex with his mother? I wanted to say that you are special, very special. "Yes, I know. You always tell me that I'm special." "But Steve, I never told you why," my mother said, holding my hand. "You see, I was told that you are 1 in 10 million. You have a slightly different genetic structure and a rare blood type. Something to do with the Rh factor, but I'm not 100% sure what it is. You know, if you were injured and needed a blood transfusion, that could be a problem. And, God forbid, if you needed a transplant, this probably wouldn't happen. Am I a freak?" "Oh no, honey, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you have a rare blood type that fights germs a little better than most blood types. Steve, I'm not a doctor, but as it was explained to me many years ago, your blood tends to kill the host, which essentially is you. This is what killed my first two children. That's why your father and I decided not to have any more children. Your father was furious when I accidentally became pregnant with you. He didn't want to go through all that suffering again, but you beat the odds. However, when you were younger and sick, I think he thought you were going to die and just left. I don't blame him for leaving. He was a good man, but I think he just reached his limit. I tried to contact him when you were feeling better, but he just disappeared. So you're saying that I'm going to die?" "No, dear, the older you get, the stronger your body becomes. There are 3 types of blood in yours, and it's something like blood type O. It can be used when the other 2 groups require transfusion. Look, I don't understand all of this, but when you turn 18, they want you to do a case study and also for you to store your blood in case you ever need it. It was a lot to take in at once. At least now I know why she didn't let me play football. I think after that conversation I became a little paranoid. Even the shaved cut made my heart race. At that moment I didn't even want to run cross-country, but my mother insisted. Steve, you'll drive yourself crazy worrying about this. You are in the hands of God, and if He wants to take you away, there is nothing you and I can do about it. So I ran, and I ran as fast as I could so that God wouldn't catch me. There was no way my mother could send me to college. We simply didn't have the money. Although my grades were good, they were not high enough to receive a scholarship. However, I received a need-based scholarship, and since I never let God catch me, I received a partial scholarship. Hell, I could have had enough if I was careful. In the first semester, I enjoyed student life too much, and my grades showed it. Mom didn't say a word. She didn't have to. I saw it on her face. I pulled myself together and started doing what I should have done from the beginning. The competition was much more difficult than in high school, and instead of 35 students in my class, there were now 135, but I persisted. This is what I like to see, she said, looking at my next grades. A 3.5 GPA for the semester was good, but I needed to work even harder because of the 2 I got in my first semester. This is how the first year and half of the second passed. When I came home for Christmas break, my mother took me to the research center. Mr. Kemp, we are glad you could come, the director told us. Why don't I give you a tour, and then we can sit down and talk? The room was white, stainless steel, and sterile. Everyone was wearing lab coats, and no one seemed to be smiling. Well, what do you think? About what? I asked, a little embarrassed. About our facility and joining our research program. I'm not sure I want to be your lab rat, I said. I don't really like needles, and all this attention around me would probably drive me crazy. I tried to be polite. No problem, but I would suggest you donate a pint of blood about every 2 or 3 months. If you ever need surgery, having your own blood is a big advantage. I say the same thing to the other 2. You mean you have others here? Yes, the other 2 are in the program. They come in every 6 months for checkups, and we do several tests. It's free, and they are well compensated for their time. Linda lives here in New York and Richie studies in Chicago, but lives in India. If you want to meet them, they will be here tomorrow. Maybe I'll come back tomorrow. What time? Steve, why don't you come over, say, around 11:30? By then, they will have finished their tests, and you will have plenty of time to talk to them. I guessed I wasn't the only freak. They were having lunch when I arrived. Richie was about 24 years old. They were having lunch when I arrived. Richie was about 24 years old and very frail, but Linda looked good for a freak of a woman. In fact, she looked almost sexy. Having finished with the introductions, we got down to business. Have you joined yet? Richie asked. Not yet. I'm considering my options, I replied. Well, it's a good deal, but after this year I'm done. I'm going home to get married and live a normal life, whatever that is, he said with a laugh. And you, Linda? I asked. I'm not doing this for the money. I just want to make sure I stay healthy. I've never been sick and I want to stay that way, she said, looking at Richie. I would like to stick her with a needle, I thought, burning holes in her clothes with my eyes. Steve, if you look at my breasts any harder, you'll strain your eyes, she said, smiling. But thanks for the compliment anyway. I mumbled something as we all started laughing. Okay, I'm a guy and you look really good, I said, finally regaining my composure. I saw Linda from time to time over the next 2 years. We even started dating casually. During Christmas break, when I was in my second year of the program, we went out almost every evening. On the 3rd night, walking her home, I kissed her. Steve, I'm not a damn porcelain doll. For God's sake, I won't break if you hug me, kiss me, and throw me on the bed. You have a choice, We can hang out outside my house while my dad watches, or we can go somewhere more private. My house wasn't an option either because of my mom, so we chose Plan C, a room at a Holiday Inn. On Friday, we had dinner and returned to the Holiday Inn for dessert. I knew her parents had money, but I didn't realize how much until I went to their house for Christmas Eve dinner. When I arrived at the house, as she called it, I swallowed my saliva. This waste room mansion. Steve, Linda tells me you're graduating next semester with a degree in sociology. What are your plans for the future? Asked her father, studying me from head to toe. Mr. Andrews, I began. Steve, call me fucking Bob. Okay, Bob, I plan to teach and do a little research. You can't make much money in this, right? He asked. It all depends on where you teach and what kind of grants you can get. So we're talking about the upper 5 to 6 figures. About that, I replied. Honey, money isn't everything, Linda interjected. Daughter, I just want to know, if you are serious with him, how he is going to support my baby, that's all. I wouldn't want you to go shopping with food stamps, he said, now smiling at his daughter. I hope he doesn't fingerprint me or do a gut check, I said to myself, starting to get irritated. Does your mother work at a law firm in town? At Simon and Thompson. She's been there for over 20 years. It's a good company. I sometimes use their services, he told me. Where did she get her degree? Bob, my mom is not a lawyer. She is the billing and office manager there. Oh, sorry, Steve. I was just guessing, he said, trying to walk back. The rest of the dinner went pretty much the same as the first part. I didn't like the fact that I felt like I was on the witness stand being questioned. But Linda assured me that everyone she met had gone through the same baptism by fire. I understood her father's concern, but I still didn't like it. My grandparents, as well as my mother and Linda, attended my graduation. I've already taken a job at the local college to be closer to Linda. I was still living at home, for no other reason than to help my mother with her expenses, but I began to look for my own place. Mom, why don't you sell the house and buy yourself a small apartment? What you get for the house, you can pay the rent in cash and still have enough money in the bank to live on. Honey, are you trying to tell me something? Well, I'm kind of looking for my own place. I think it's time for me to be alone, I tried to say without delving into her feelings. I have a better idea. Why don't I sell you the house and move? This place is too big for me, and you're just starting out, and you'll need a place to grow up. A wedding in the foreseeable future, and maybe a grandchild, she said, smirking as I blushed a little. I haven't asked her, but I'm planning on doing it for Valentine's Day. Do you think she will say yes? I think it will, but I'm not too sure about her father. I think he doesn't think I'm good enough for her. Son, you don't marry him, you marry Linda. Let her deal with her father. Easy to say, Mom, but you are also marrying into a family. Remember that. My grandmother wanted me to give Linda her engagement ring, but I told her to keep it. Grandma, if we have a boy, he can always give it to his bride, and if we have a girl, she can always keep it as a keepsake. I sold some stuff and borrowed a few dollars from my mom so I could afford a ring with a stone large enough to be seen without a magnifying glass. Not flashy, but nice. I made a reservation at a nice quiet restaurant and, ring in hand, picked her up. While eating, I was on pins and needles. Linda seemed to suspect something because she kept her eyes on me. I thought of all the cute ways to ask her to marry me, but they just weren't my style. Right before dessert, I got down on one knee and opened my heart to her, asking her to become my wife with half the restaurant looking on. Looking back, I should have run outside, thrown the ring as far as I could, got in the car and drove away. I haven't done this, but I wish I could. Steve, I may be a little old-fashioned, but did you ask my father for permission? Was her answer. Linda, I want to marry you, not your father, I replied as everyone realized what had happened and began to move away so as not to embarrass me further. Steve, I love you to death, and I will say yes. I will marry you after you talk to your father. I know he can be annoying, but he's only like that because he wants to protect me, that's all. Linda, you and I both know that he doesn't love me and thinks you can find someone better. So if you don't mind, I've lost my appetite and I think it's time to take you home. She tried to say something, but her words hit the wall. When we pulled up to her house, I got out and opened the door for her, gave her a quick kiss, and got back into the car. Steve, aren't you going to come in and talk to my dad? You talk to him. He loves you much more than me, I said as I started the car and drove away, leaving Linda with tears in her eyes. I think it was a cowardly move, but if she had to ask Dad's permission to marry me, where would it end? I'd probably have to clear every major decision with Dad, and I wasn't going to start out like that. I'm afraid she was and will remain Daddy's girl. She called me a dozen times, but since my phone was off, it didn't matter. Mom was sad and sympathized with me, but did not take sides. I drank 2 beers and went to bed. After all, I still had to go to work in the morning. I saw him at the back of the room as I began to lecture. I made sure it was the most professional and eloquent lecture I had ever given, if anything, to show Daddy that I was not a timid little boy trembling before his almighty dad. There was no applause when I finished, but at least no one fell asleep. I watched as he approached the pulpit. Now he was in my territory. Steve, do you have a minute? Sure, Bob. How can I help you? I asked, knowing why he was here. I heard you want to marry my daughter, and to be honest, I have a few concerns about it, he began before I interrupted him. Bob, I don't know where you got this information, but I can assure you that I am no longer interested in marrying your daughter. But Linda said you had a ring and proposed. I don't understand. I actually proposed, but she said no, so I decided to move on, I told a shocked Bob. That's not how I heard it, but if what you're saying is true, then I guess I was misinformed, he said, trying to find a respectful way to leave. I just told her I wanted to marry her, not her damn father. No, I don't want to marry Daddy's daughter. Marriage is hard enough as it is. I don't want my wife running to Dad every time something goes wrong. I want a wife and equal partner, not a screaming child. But if you'll excuse me, Bob, I have office hours and a line of students who need me. Thank you for stopping by, and I hope I cleared up any misunderstandings, I said, shaking his hand and walking out of the auditorium with my pride intact. 3 days. It took me 3 damn days for Linda to call me. I thought I had overplayed my hand, deciding that there was no way I was going to call her first. You weren't going to call, were you? Linda asked. No. Why? You have made your position quite clear, and so have I, it seems to me. So what else can we talk about? I said to an irritated Linda. Do you not love me anymore? Linda, I never said that. I love you to death. Do you think I often get down on my knees with a ring in my hand in front of every girl I meet? Damn it, Steve, you're confusing me. You told my father you were leaving. Don't you want to get married? It depends on the situation. If she's a whiny daddy's girl, hell no. But if she is a beautiful 22-year-old blonde who wants to build a life with me as an equal partner, it would be a great honor for me to take her as my wife. Stay here and don't move, Linda said as she hung up. 35 minutes later, a confused Linda was standing at my door. Okay, let's try again, she said, holding out her left hand. Pulling the ring out of my pocket, I got down on one knee and asked if she would do me the honor of becoming my bride. This time she said yes and jumped into my arms. Mom, can you come out? I asked her as I could see her reflection in the living room mirror watching us. I'm so happy for you too. I know you'll both be happy. From my house, we went to her and announced to everyone that we were getting married. Her father still thought she was marrying someone below her class, but kept his mouth shut, at least in my presence. Her mother was overjoyed and said that she and her mother would be very busy in the future. Hell, they had a wedding to plan. My guest list was only 15 people, while Linda's was over 250. Since they were paying for it, I didn't care. But what I didn't like was the way Linda and her mom took on all the responsibility and basically pushed my mother away. "Steve, don't worry about it," she told me. "It's her day, and I definitely don't want to make waves, and remember, it's just one day in the rest of your life. Let her do her thing, and when you return from your honeymoon, it will be just the two of you. I'm just glad you found someone special." I loved my mother. She would do anything for anyone and taught me what really matters: family and friends. The only way I can explain this is that our wedding was an event. Without knowing exactly, it must have cost more than $200,000. Hell, Linda's wedding dress alone cost more than 20. I accepted it, had a good time, and only had 2 glasses of wine. It's no use getting drunk. Linda, on the other hand, exploded, and by 11 o'clock, she was ready for the evening. Her parents also paid for our honeymoon, 7-day Windjammer cruise in the Caribbean. At midnight, I grabbed my bride, carried her to our room, and laid her on the bed. I carefully undressed her and climbed onto the bed next to her. I kissed her forehead and went to bed. You see, Linda got so drunk that she passed out in the chair downstairs. This is not how I expected to spend my wedding night. Her father flew us over on his private jet, and Linda spent the first day emptying her stomach and gaining sea strength. We were on a boat with 3 other couples, and much to my disappointment, they were also members of the beautiful people group that I began to hate. If you have a lot of money, just don't throw it in my face. They were all tanned and beautiful, and the women on deck wore almost nothing. "Linda, I don't want you walking around naked around everyone. I just don't want to come back with tan lines. That's all. What do you think will happen? You think I'm going to grab a couple of guys and poke their eyes out? Relax, will you? You're the only man who's going to get any of this," she said, placing her hands on her hips. "And if you're really good, maybe tonight we can hang out on the deck under the stars when everyone is asleep," she said, kissing me, and we did that night. But I swear to God, I think I saw a couple of the crew members watching us. I was glad when the cruise ended. Last night, I almost lost control. Robert was dancing with my wife, and everyone was drunk as hell. We snacked on fruit, drank rum cocktails, and had a good time. Cal, one of the other husbands, suggested something that was beyond reason, and I couldn't stand it. A small scuffle ensued, and the crew had to separate us. I grabbed Linda and headed to our cabin, the steam billowing away from me. After I slammed the door, I came face to face with her. Bob apologized the next morning and said he was wrong. "From all the sounds last night, it looks like you two have made up. You have a hot woman, but if I were you, I'd keep her on a short leash," he said, slapping me on the shoulder. I was glad to return home, and now that we had rented a studio apartment, we were husband and wife. I like this phrase, husband and wife. I was happy, she was happy, and if her father had not interfered with our marriage, we would have remained that way, but he just couldn't let go. I tried not to say anything, but it was difficult. A new car and pocket money under the table caused some miscellaneous glazour, but a year later, when we had a Miss and Linda got pregnant, I almost lost it. Nothing was enough for his little girl. We got a new apartment with no less than 3 bedrooms, children's furniture and clothes, and even more clothes for Linda when she outgrew what she had. Hell, I was happy at work, and sometimes I was afraid to go home and see what new thing was waiting for me. Relax, Steve. Take a deep breath and relax. You know, boba. Just be glad you don't have twins, she said with a laugh. My mother always knew what to say. Joanna, named after her grandmother, was born with 10 fingers and toes and was healthy. We all knew there would be problems, but Linda had the best treatment money could buy. The first year I held my breath, and from then on she became a daddy's girl. Don't get me wrong, Linda loved her baby, but she didn't want to be bothered by all that motherhood bullshit. We had a nanny. One showed up one morning, and I thought we would become a family, but that didn't happen. Her family or their friends always got together. I loved my job, but the hours weren't 8 to 5, and I often found myself working at home outside of class. Honey, why don't you go without me? I'll stay here with Annie, as I now call her, and do my work, I told her. You are sure? Go, have fun, my love. We will both have a good time here, I said, kissing her. Keep the bed warm for me, and I'll be back early. And she has always been like this. We had a great sex life. I had a fantastic job and a family that most men would kill for. I had it all. However, I soon found myself missing many events, and after a while Linda stopped asking me to go with her, and if I really wanted to go, she sometimes tried to dissuade me. All the rich, powerful, and beautiful people have always been there. Husbands worked, wives went to the spa or shopping, and I had nothing in common with any of them except Linda. Her father was always introducing her to his new acquaintance or friend, and I was always standing in the corner, trying to start a conversation with this or that person. Mom finally sold her house and moved into a small apartment. She picked Annie up one day a week and apparently developed a relationship with her. My mother loved this little girl very much. Darling, would you be very upset if I went with Dad for 3 days on a walk? His friend had just bought a new boat and invited him for a test run. Mom doesn't want to go, so he asked me to accompany him. This is only for 3 days, please. Wow, 3 days without you in my bed, I said, rubbing my chin. Let's do the math. 3 times 2 equals 6. I think we still have time to save up a few extra sessions if we start now, I said. I chased her to the bedroom. Like I said, I loved my girlfriend to death. The next week she left, came back, and life continued as usual, or so it seemed to me. The parties and meetings continued, and as I contemplated the possibility of pursuing a PhD, I kept myself busy, especially when Annie needed me. Mom was the first to notice the changes. Linda has been away a lot lately. Are you okay? Everything is fine. I have her, Annie, and my work to keep me busy. You're probably right. I'm just a worried mom, that's all. At the next party, Linda didn't even mention her until she was walking out the door. I'll be back before midnight, she said, blowing me a kiss. Where will it be? I asked. Randy and Peg's, you know, she replied. Don't work too hard. Hell, I didn't have much to do anyway, so I decided to surprise her and meet her there. I left Annie with my mom and headed to the party. I walked in and, drink in hand, started looking for Linda. Where the hell is she? I asked myself, not finding her downstairs. When I walked up the stairs, I had no idea where to go. I saw several people, but Linda was not there. Then I heard it. It wasn't loud, more like a muffled whisper, but I immediately knew what it was. The sound came from a room 2 doors to the left in the corridor. I tried to turn the doorknob, but it was locked. I probably shouldn't have knocked on the door, but I wanted to get in, and right now. A small crowd gathered as I screamed at Linda to fucking open the door. I waited, but didn't hear anything. Having pushed everyone aside, I almost ran downstairs. With shaking hands, I started the car and tried to drive away. Randy came out and tried to stop me, but I told him that if he didn't move, I would run him over. Randy, can you do me a favor and please tell my cheating wife not to come home today? With the mood I'm in right now, I shouldn't be talking to her. With these words, I left. I took Annie and, as upset as I was, I didn't tell my mom anything. There was no point in upsetting her either. My phone rang until I threw it out the car window. I saw him bounce twice before being run over by another car. With Annie in bed, I just sat in the dark. I didn't understand how, why, or how long it probably went on. Only that I can't stand it. What real man could? Linda arrived the next morning. I was still sitting in the same chair as last night, and by the looks of it, Linda was awake too. He was so good that you were ready to ruin your marriage for him. And please don't insult me by saying you didn't do anything. I heard everything. You probably should have used a pillow this time. I told her. Steve, it just happened, she began. Did it just happen? Define what you mean by this. You just happened to be upstairs. You just accidentally walked into his room. I understand how this could just happen by accident, I said, already very irritated. I'm so sorry, Steve. Please, darling, it was just this one time. We can get over it, can't we? She said, starting to cry. Bullshit. How stupid do you think I am? Linda, I looked at her in surprise. It wasn't the first time. It was just the first time you got caught. You love him? I hope so, because after what you did, you definitely can't love me. Please, Linda, just go away. Get out of my sight. You make me sick. She rushed to the door and left, leaving me shattered and still wondering why. Annie and I made it through the weekend. I took Annie to my mom and finally gave her the short version of what happened. Well, it was short because I still didn't know all the details. On Tuesday evening, when I returned home with Annie, Linda was already waiting for me. She grabbed her and kissed her hard, telling her how much she missed her, but not about me. Steve, I love you so much. Please let me try to fix this. How? Are you going to give me back my nightmares of the last few nights? Just tell me why. Was I so bad in bed that you needed to find someone better? I just don't understand, I now shouted at her. It has nothing to do with sex. You just don't want to do what I want anymore. I can't sit in this place night after night. I got bored with our life. I wanted more. So, apparently, you needed an affair to spice up your life. At least you weren't bored anymore. Steve, I didn't want to cheat in the first place. It just happened. We got deeper and deeper into it, and that night we finally made it. I am so sorry. Steve, believe it or not, I still want you. I want to go back to the family life I had before all this, she said, now pleading with me. I also wish I loved you more than anyone before, but it will never be the same. You took from me what you can never get back, my pride. I know your father knows, and if he knows, then your whole family knows. If I had to guess, I would say that your father arranged this for you, or at least had a hand in it. At these words, Linda grabbed her mouth and began to cry again. Well, now I have the answer, and you want me to just forget about everything as if nothing happened. Your father drew a line, and you crossed it. I hope you both are happy. Linda left, and if I thought things could get worse, I was wrong. The next day, while I was at work, Linda, or someone else, took all of her and Annie's things out of our apartment. She left, and so did my daughter. At school, I was served with divorce papers and a restraining order. She wasted no time. She was obviously in a lot of pain. I found a lawyer, but they immediately told me that they held all the cards. Steve, you will never get custody, and they are not even asking for alimony or maintenance. Make the best visiting agreement and stick to it. If you resist, they have the money and power to hurt you. To hell with it. I'm tired of Dad always getting his way. Get shared custody. What else can he do to me? Okay, I was naive and perhaps a little stubborn. When I rejected her first offer, the blow came hard. I was accused of sexual harassment and fired from my teaching job. I was not given any process, just removed from my position. I'll go to the Eclue, I told the college president. Let's see, Bob called the supporters club. They called you. You paid a needy student to say I did something, and I was fired in just 3 days. They'll love it. Steve, I'm not saying yes or no, but what will it take for you to disappear? He asked me. 500,000, a clean work record, and you'll never hear from me again. We don't have that kind of money. I didn't say you have them. Just call your friend Bob and pass on my offer to him. Also tell him that I will refuse shared custody, but will insist on unsupervised visitation. Don't worry, he'll agree. He loves to win. I got my money and could see Annie 1 weekend a month. I moved out of my apartment and moved into a small apartment in the same building as my mother. Life essentially sucked. Over the next 5 years, they did everything they could to brainwash Annie against me. I was the reason for the breakup, and they spoiled her to the point where she became a younger version of Linda. As for Linda, she ended up marrying Don, the same bastard I caught her with that night. He was 10 years older than her, and she found that he was even less sociable than I was. Weekends with Annie got so bad that I stopped picking her up. My mom still sent her holiday cards, but she basically disowned me. Then, 2 years later, I got my comeuppance. They were all in a terrible car accident. No one died, but everyone was badly maimed. Mom went to the hospital, but was made to feel unwelcome. She didn't do anything bad to them and was only trying to be a good grandmother to Annie. A man can be wearing an Armani suit, but underneath he'll still be a jerk. Steve, Dr. Ryan from the research facility. I know we haven't talked in a while, but I have a serious problem and I need your help. To a person with yours, the disease urgently requires a liver transplant, and you are our last hope, he told me. Have you tried Richie? I asked. He refused, even despite a large cash offer. It's a risky operation, and he believes he could put his family in danger if he dies. Like he said, money isn't everything. How much are they offering? I asked. $5 million in advance. Wow, that's a lot of money. So will you agree? I wouldn't say yes. Who is the patient? They want to remain anonymous, you know. I certainly understand. Doc, I'm sorry, but I'm just not interested. Steve, you are our last hope at the moment, he insisted, trying to influence me and make me feel guilty. Sorry, Doc, but you'll have to find someone else, I said, hanging up while he was still begging me. 24 hours later, Plan B emerged. Linda's mother, Anne, came. I wasn't even going to open the door, but at least she had been polite to me in the past. Steve, you look good. Do you have a minute to talk to me? Is it really important? Of course, Anne. Please come in. I think you know why I'm here, Steve. Linda was in an accident and is in critical condition. She urgently needs a liver transplant or she will die, she said, now with tears in her eyes. Damn, this is bad. Give her my best wishes when you see her. Steve, I may not have been clear. She needs a liver transplant or she will die. I could see her disappointment. Her voice was shaking, and I almost felt sorry for her. I'd really like to help, Anne, but as Bob always told me, I have a problem with it. But if you'll excuse me, I have dinner, and I don't want to be late. Complete shock was the only thing that could describe the expression on her face. Steve, she's going to die if she doesn't get a transplant, she said again. Anne, I heard you for the first time, and like I said, I'm sorry I can't help. But give her my best wishes, I said, pushing her out of my apartment. Steve, I know you know about Linda's condition, Mom said over dinner. And yes, I really did. And what? Should I feel bad about this? Linda was your wife, Annie's mother. Yes, that's right. This is the one who cheated on me and turned my daughter against me. Now I remember her, I said sarcastically. Okay, things didn't go as you planned, but it would still be Christian to help her. When she cheated on me, was it Christian? Firing me from my job, taking Annie away and turning her against me. Was that Christian too? I don't think so. Let them all burn in hell. 2 days later, a reserved Bob showed up at my door. I made him stand outside for 15 minutes before opening the door. He was good. Damn, he was very convincing in his requests. When he offered me 5 and then 7 million, I thought for a moment. It was a huge amount of money. Damn, that's a lot of money, Bob, but I have a few concerns, I said with a grin. With that kind of money, I would probably turn into an asshole like you and end up having to shoot myself. You see, I hate you more than anything in the world. You ruined my life and took away everything that was dear to me. Now you want to buy me to save what is more valuable to you than money. At least Linda knew what a jerk you really were when she left me. But after what she did, there was no turning back. So get out of my sight before I do what I've wanted to do for years. You lost, and all the money in the world won't help you. Bob walked away with his head down. He won, but at what cost? Between him and Linda, they turned my heart to stone, and nothing on earth could change that. I saw Linda before she died. Don, her vile husband, was by her side. There was an expression of disdain on his face when I entered her room. "What the hell are you doing here?" he blurted out. "Just wanted to ask Linda if she'd like to see the face of a real man one more time before she meets her maker." I think if he could have gotten up, he would have tried to hit me. Instead, he just threw a few insults my way. "Stop. Enough for both of you," Linda intervened. "I think enough is said and done for two lives. Steve, you look good. And you too, Linda. I always loved seeing you on your back, but not with tubes and bags. Have you received anything strange lately?" I asked. "Do you have any more insults? I know of a few others that would be appropriate in this situation. Let's just say I'm sorry for what I did to you and leave it at that, okay?" Cold. "Steve, why are you here?" "Just wanted to see with my own eyes what a rich white trash dump looks like when it dies. I heard that if you pay enough, you can even hire angels to take you to heaven, so you don't even have to die. Dad offered me $7 million. I think he'll have to at least double that amount for what you're looking for." The guy threw a washcloth at me and fell to the floor, coughing and trying to get to me. "Steve, I didn't realize you hated me so much. I know I hurt you, and I know my apologies don't mean anything anymore, but I really loved you. You, your father, and this idiot here drained all the blood out of me and replaced it with ice water. I'm just waiting for you to die. Then this will end for me, and I can move on with my life. If it were you, I would grab the priest and do a complete repentance. Although I once said that I wanted you to burn in hell, you weren't always a cheater. Take care of yourself, and I hope to see you in the next world," I said, leaving her room, seeing her alive for the last time. I didn't dance on her grave. I would have liked to, but my heart gradually began to thaw. Mom was getting older and still sent Annie holiday cards, but she never received a response. I met Deborah, or rather she found me, 2 years after Linda died. She was tracking down past patients at a research clinic and called me. "You don't have to, but we'd like you to come in for a checkup. It's been 5 years, and we'd like to compare how you feel now compared to how you felt when you started." I taught in a small community college and told her that I would come on Thursday after my last class. She was a fiery redhead with shoulder-length curly hair, green eyes, a small snub nose, and a ton of freckles. To say that we got along is an understatement. "I see here that you were married to another patient, Linda, who died. Have children?" "Only one, Annie," I replied. "How is she?" "Don't know. I haven't had contact with her for many years. Her mother did everything she could to convince her that I was a monster before she died," I replied. "It's horrible. I hope you have another chance to meet her. Children need to know both sides of their parents' story," she said. Deborah and I didn't start dating right away, but we eventually hit it off. She was smart, funny, and most importantly, seemed genuinely interested in getting to know the real me, despite my tumultuous past. We lived together for 4 years before I proposed to her. I was no longer young, and neither was she, so we decided not to waste time. Our wedding was small, just family and a few close friends. Annie never came. I sent her an invitation, but it came back marked recipient unknown. My mom tried to contact her through social media, but was unsuccessful. Deborah said to me one day as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, "Maybe Annie isn't ready to forgive you, Steve, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't forgive yourself and move on with your life. You deserve to be happy, despite everything that has happened." Her words felt right, and I tried to move forward every day, although sometimes it was not so easy. We decided not to revisit my past too often, as it would only cause pain. We felt good together, and that was the main thing. Over time, I have found peace in simply living in the moment, enjoying moments with Deborah and appreciating the quiet simplicity of our days. We often walked, gardened, and sometimes met friends for dinner. Life was calm, and that was all we needed. Even though Annie was a missing part of my life, I tried not to focus on the loss. My mother died a couple of years after we got married, and it was hard, but her legacy of love for life and forgiveness stayed with me. I often thought of her when I saw the sunset turn the sky fiery colors outside our house. Deborah supported me, and her unfailing love and understanding helped me come to terms with my past wounds. Although the burden of past mistakes weighed heavily on me at times, I learned to see them as lessons and not just sadness. We discussed the possibility of adoption, since Deborah knew that I always wanted a big family. This prospect seemed attractive to both of us. She saw children as an opportunity to give something good to the world, and I shared her views. Life offered me a second chance at happiness, and I decided to take full advantage of it. Memories of past difficulties became less painful, and I learned to appreciate every day spent with my loved one by my side. As difficult as the path was, it led me to a place where I could be myself without fear of judgment or judgment. Deborah and I were able to build a life that was full of love, understanding, and most importantly, reconciliation. By learning to let go of the past and appreciate the present, I have found true peace that once seemed unattainable. This new chapter in my life has been filled with opportunities for growth and change, and I'm glad I was able to live it.